I'm George Curtis. Welcome to It's Your Law. Each week it's my privilege to bring guests that help all of us understand the law, how it works, how it sometimes doesn't work the way we thought it would work, and who makes it work. Whose responsibility is it that our law is our servant and we aren't the servant of the law? My guests are always interesting and challenging, and it's especially fun at this time of the year because we've got an election coming up. I love elections. The jury box and the ballot box are the two segments of democracy we still haven't sold to the big corporations. You're just as important as the president when it comes to voting. I hope you're voting, and I hope you're paying attention because we have some real important races, and I think the most important one before you and me right now is that Branch 1, Circuit Court, Judge of Branch 1 is open. Judge Gritton has decided not to run. And we have two excellent candidates, but only one of them is going to be judge. And I want you to meet one of the candidates today and find out if she's your choice. She could well be your choice, and her name is Teresa Basiliere. Welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you, George.
Thank you so much for coming. You're a native Oshkoshian. I'm not. Your dad, who was my doctor, incidentally, is originally from Oshkosh.
That's correct.
And in fact, I understand he played quarterback for some of the great teams of Oshkosh West.
Yes, he did. Yes, he did.
And you came to this town as he got out of the reserves and set up his private practice here as a physician. And he's alive and well and working in your campaign, isn't he?
He is. He is. He is actually my treasurer.
All right. And you decided not to go into medicine, to go into law. Why was that?
Well, I think that my dad would tell you that when I was born, I came out talking. And I've always liked to debate. My grandfather used to say that I was going to grow up to be an attorney because he and I would debate politics all the time. I think my passion was more to heal the injustices versus heal individuals. But of course, I have great respect for what my dad has done and the commitment that he had to his patients and this community. He continued to volunteer his services even after retiring, and just recently when the Living Healthy Clinic closed in Oshkosh, he had been working there volunteering his time for those that were underinsured and didn't have insurance.
You've done your share of volunteering yourself. Tell us about it.
I've done quite a bit of volunteering. I do take my commitment to doing pro bono work very seriously. I think all lawyers have a commitment to do that and should have a commitment to do it. But I served on the Board of Legal Services. I was president of the Board of Legal Services. I'd actually started my career as an attorney at Legal Services, which represented individuals that were poor. And the cases that we did domestic violence divorces, we did housing cases, custody cases, matters like that were issues a lot of time that hit the population that are poor. Unfortunately, the resources were quite limited at Legal Services, and therefore we could only take the most serious domestic violence cases. So we were limited to cases where there was physical violence. So it was the worst of the worst.
And you've continued with an emphasis on family law.
I have. I've actually done a wide range of the law. I had the county contract for years as guardian ad litem, and as part of that contract, you also had to serve as adversary counsel in mental commitments and alcohol commitments. You would serve as adversary counsel in child needed protection and services and serve as guardian ad litem for these children. I did termination of parental rights, step-parent adoptions. I've done probate. I've been involved in personal injury cases. But, obviously a majority of my practice, certainly in the last 10 years, has been more focused on family law, but I also have a federal practice where I'm involved with disability cases and Social Security.
Well, as a circuit judge, you get to hear just about everything, don't you?
You do. Of course, that's what a judge does. A judge deals with individuals' lives, and that's what a private attorney does. I mean, as a private attorney, and I'm going to be going on 28 years of practicing law, you're uniquely qualified in the fact that these individuals that come to you, whether they come in for a divorce, they also will have questions of criminal law. How can I leave an abusive situation and not commit a crime of parental concealment? So you have to be very versed as a private lawyer in many areas of the law so that you can properly advise your clients. You have to know taxation if you do divorce work. You have to know the custody and the child code and child protection laws if you do family law, because those issues can be involved in your caseload as well. And that's what a judge does. A judge basically has to deal with individuals' lives all the time. And that's why I think that being a private attorney makes me qualified, because I have had to represent people from all walks of life: children, elderly, mentally ill, veterans, parents, people that have all kinds of problems. As you well know, a majority of people that come to the court, they come to the court in an emotional trauma. They've either been injured in an automobile accident, they've got some severe physical disabilities as a result of that, or they're concerned about their parent who is unable to care for themselves, so therefore they're having to go through a guardianship and a protective placement. But it mostly is a situation where it's not a happy occasion. And so, of course, you have to deal with people who are in trauma, they're emotionally upset, and you have to have a certain demeanor to be able to handle those kinds of matters. And I do believe as a private attorney, I've had that demeanor, and I think that I will take that onto the bench as well.
Well, Teresa, hold that thought because we have to take our first break. But when we come back, I'm going to ask you to describe to the public what a scary experience it is for a lay person to come to court. We'll be right back. Welcome back to It's Your Law. I'm George Curtis, and attorney Teresa Basiliere is my guest. She's one of the 2 candidates for Judge, Circuit Court, Branch 1, Winnebago County. It's open, there's a vacancy, and we have 2 outstanding candidates who have a breadth of experience, somewhat different experience, but some similarities. They've both spent plenty of times in the courtroom and are in a position to comment as to their views as to how the litigants and the witnesses feel when they come into that scary place, the courtroom.
That's true, George. Being that, I've practiced for the years that I've practiced, I have seen individuals go into the courtroom, and it's a terrifying experience. If you are going in and you're going to be litigating regarding custody of your children, I mean, people are passionate about their kids, and they're scared about what's going to happen. They're scared about the decision that will be made. If there's been domestic violence, they might be afraid to even be in the courtroom with the abuser. And I have represented individuals where they've had very positive experiences in the courtroom. I've had some individuals that were somewhat surprised of the experience that they had in the courtroom. I mean, by and large, I think Winnebago County's been very lucky in the judiciary that we've had. I've had the experience of working in about 13 different counties through my practice, although more primarily in Winnebago. But I've seen different judiciaries, and I've certainly seen different responses from the bench towards the public. If the public is not heard, and they don't feel like their issues are deemed significant, then I feel that they walk away with a bad view of the judicial system, which I don't think is appropriate. I think that is something a judge needs to do.
When we go to court and ask the judge or the jury for a decision, somebody's going to lose. And we can't really fix that unless a compromise is accomplished short of having the decision made. But I'll give you my opinion very briefly. Your opinion is more important. I think the most important things that we offer people who are litigants is that a judge patiently, kindly hears their story, listens. What do you think?
Absolutely. I think that is very imperative. I've found through my practice that individuals can accept bad news if they understand why it's happening. If they understand the law, they understand the application of the facts to it, that they can accept it. And they still feel like they'll have a positive experience from the judiciary. So absolutely, that's imperative.
Now, things are changing in the courtroom, just like everyone else, and every place else. There's a lot more technology, but the kinds of cases that are tying up our courts have changed a great deal. For example, the insurance interests that I fight all the time are always saying we need tort reform. Our courts are being clogged up with greedy lawyers filing groundless lawsuits that are driving up insurance rates and all of that sort of thing. Of course, none of that is true. As you read the statistics, there are fewer and fewer those kinds of cases every year. There are fewer and fewer jury trials every year. In the last 3 years, I think there have been 5 or 6 total successful med-mal cases in the whole state. For legislative reasons, that whole area has largely dried up. Of course, the insurance lobby has something to do with that. But at the same time, there are other kinds of cases that are increasing in number, and that's what you're going to be faced if you are elected judge. What are those cases?
Well, I think that what we're seeing now is there is a focus on problem-solving courts, whether it is a drug court or whether it is a mental health court or whether it is a domestic violence court. Different court systems are setting up these problem-solving courts. And I think that is a new thing that we're seeing. Some are doing it obviously for reasons of alternatives in sentencing. Of course, there's a lot of information out there of the crisis in the amount of individuals that we have that are incarcerated, and the fact that this is costing the state, $1.1 billion. And what do we do with those alternatives in sentencing? We can't do anything about our violent offenders. They are where they need to be to keep the community safe. But what do you do with the I think there were 67% that were deemed to be in prison for violent offenses. What do you do with the other percentage? Can you find alternatives in sentencing that are going to basically help the community? So I think that's one of the focus that is different. I myself am very fascinated with domestic violence courts. I don't know how well it would work in our community versus the fact that we don't have specialty courts like Milwaukee County has. They have like a criminal court, a probate court. They have a family court, and they have some emphasis on putting like domestic violence cases where there may be an overlap between the family court judge and the criminal judge in the domestic violence cases, where you try to keep all the facts in one area, one bench, so that the judge is very familiar with the facts, so to process those cases that involve domestic violence a little bit differently. So I think that that's a push for the future. I think that all thing that you're going to see in the future too is there's so much more bench trials now. And why is that? I mean, some will indicate that that's because the issues are very complex, and that maybe the litigants believe that a judge needs to understand or would understand those issues better. And some may believe they don't want to spend the money because jury trials are more expensive. Money is always a driving force. So
we're going to have to take our second break, but you've touched on something that's very important to the people. I think that the right to a jury trial is too often waived, and it is important that we have the right as citizens to be judged by a jury of our peers? And I want you to give some thought to that question when we come right back. Welcome back to It's Your Law. Teresa Basiliere and I are talking about the judge race coming up for Branch 1. And as we ended the last segment, I made the comment that I am troubled about people giving up their right to a jury trial. I think that individual citizen participation in the ballot box and the jury box are all we have left that the big multi-million-dollar corporations haven't bought and put away like they have our Congress, our judgeships, our presidency, and everything else. The citizen still is king in the jury box and the ballot box, which is significant right now. Your comment, please.
That's true, George. I mean, obviously, the jury system is part of our entire system. It's our rights as individuals, and the right for the litigants also is to make that decision in cases to decide whether to put their case before a jury or to put the case in front of a bench for a bench trial. It is true that a majority of cases, 83 to 87%, are bench trials. So, of course, that's what a judge is mostly going to be doing. But nevertheless, that does not lessen the importance of the jury system. Obviously, it is very important that individuals have that right. There are some cases that by law do not have jury trials. Family law issues are one. Interesting enough, some states do have divorces by jury trial, but we do not in the state of Wisconsin. So you don't really have that opportunity. And so, of course, it really depends upon the types of cases that you're going to have. What a judge does is a judge deals with people in all different types of cases.
We have about 5 minutes left. We have an important race coming up. It's a nonpartisan race. It has been a clean race. I haven't heard either of the candidates say bad things about each other. They both are qualified. The electorate has to make a choice, and I want them to make a choice. I want them to make a choice based on making the effort to find out about the candidates and deciding which one they prefer, because they're going to be on that bench for the next 6 years. Why don't you tell us why they should vote for Teresa Basiliere?
Thanks, George. Well, again, because that I have worked in this community, I've been a community member for about 40 years. I have a passion for this community. I'm committed to the individuals who live and work here. And I certainly will bring that passion for the community to the bench. I believe that if you look at my history, and even when I started as a young lawyer, I remember being appointed to represent children as guardian ad litem. And these children were in situations that were extremely tragic. And I remember thinking how committed I was and what an immense responsibility that it was for me to make a recommendation, a decision, and to tell the court what I believe was in the best interest for this child and to litigate in the best interest of the child. I will take that same commitment that I have for those individuals and take it onto the bench. And that is to do a good job, to listen, to be impartial, to be fair, to be reasonable. I will take my knowledge of the vast areas of law and apply that. And if I don't know an answer, I will research that answer. I have never been shy of hard work. I've kind of inherited that from my parents, who were very hard workers and very committed not only to their community and the work that they did, but I share that. I share that commitment. So I would hope that the voters vote for me. I believe my experience makes me uniquely qualified, and I also think I have the personality. The National Center for State Courts outlined the characteristics as to what makes a great judge. Number one was judicial temperance. A lot of the surveys look at the judge's characteristic of what kind of personality the judge has. I have that personality. I've had to litigate against opposing counsel. I believe most opposing counsel will tell you I'm reasonable, I'm a zealous advocate, and I will do my job, but I always treat everyone with respect. Everyone deserves respect.
Well, I agree with you. I agree that most citizens will be in court perhaps once in their lifetime, and it will be a scary experience for them, and they deserve to be heard. They deserve a decision. They deserve an explanation for the decision, and that takes a little time because most people aren't trained to understand the process, and unfortunately they have learned the law from barbers, beauticians, bartenders, and Judge Judy.
That's right.
It's a little different
Right.
in the courthouse at Winnebago County. Isn't
I
it?
will not be a Judge Judy, I guarantee you.
How's the campaign going?
It's going well. It's going well. So I think that running a campaign that does not smear the other side is more beneficial to voters. Really, the voters need to look at the experience and make a decision based upon that and the type of individual they want to represent Winnebago County as a judiciary. And I think it's just not helpful to have these campaigns that are negative. That doesn't help the voters at all.
How are you getting out and meeting the people?
Oh, I have really enjoyed doing that. I've been going to fundraisers. I've been going to board meetings. I was able to get up to the town of Neenah, and learn about how their taxes are lower. They made sure they emphasized that. And went to, I've gone to Winnebago events. I've gone to AMRO, or not AMRO yet, but I'm working on that area. And I've gone to Winchester. So I'm getting out and meeting the people and listening to any concerns they might have about the judiciary.
And we have a nonpartisan election.
That's
it's
correct.
the 23rd of April, am I correct?
It is the 3rd of April.
The 3rd of April. Well, that's even sooner than that.
That's true.
And unfortunately, this is an election where 90% of the eligible voters stay home.
Yeah, that makes it challenging. Spring elections are difficult in that regard. If there isn't any really hot issues, a lot of times individuals don't get out to vote. I'm hoping that they'll determine this as a reason to get out. Of course, they should get out all the time and vote. It's part of our rights.
No candidate, no job, no public servant is more likely to impact an individual citizen than that of circuit judge. This is important. Teresa, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you, George. It's been a pleasure.
And thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Be sure to vote. It's April 3rd. It's a nonpartisan election. It's decided by people who don't vote. At nonpartisan elections in Wisconsin, unfortunately, only about 10% of the eligible voters do vote. Think of what that does to the importance of your ballot. Think of how important this particular job is. None of the candidates for any office at any time of the year are going to impact your family as much as the judge for the trial court in the community in which you live. You owe it to yourself to study these two fine candidates and make a decision as to which one of them you want as your employee doling out justice in Winnebago County for the next 6 years. Vote wisely, and you will be doing your job as a citizen. That's my opinion. I'm George Curtis.